Alright, I thought it was time to do another video, and a while ago I did a video on the Anbernic, the handheld, and I was pretty high on it. It's actually a really good emulator for up to PlayStation 1. Doesn't do Nintendo 64 very well, can't do Dreamcast very well, and a couple games run okay on it. But basically it's for anything PlayStation 1 and below. And it does a great job. I really, really like this. It is the Anbernic 351P. And, alright, so the Anbernic is a great little system. And I do love it. Now, the reason this took me so long to do it's because somebody bought this for me for Christmas. And so it was actually ordered before Christmas, and then it took about 4 months to get it because it was shipped from overseas and stuff. But it is the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. Now there is the Retroid Pocket, the Retroid Pocket 2, and then this is the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, which they should have just named it the 3. But a couple differentiating qualities of it that might be good, might be bad. I mean, it's up to you. The left analog stick is just a normal analog stick, which is good. The right is kind of like the PlayStation, the PSP, and their little nub controller things. They're not, it doesn't feel like an analog stick is the problem. But it works. And so that's one annoyance. I don't like that. I wish they had just done 2 analog sticks. The next thing is the fact that there is no push buttons on the sticks themselves. The Anbernic has push buttons on the sticks as well, which provide extra buttons, which you can then map to the various games and such. So what makes the Retroid Pocket 2 good? Like I said, I do like it. I actually love this little system. And my main reason I love it is because it is a Dreamcast beast. It can run almost all Dreamcast games. The other ones have a real problem with that. And for the price, this is $99.99, so it was $100. So thank you to the person that got it for me. It runs Dreamcast amazingly. I use Redream on it, which Redream for the PC runs really well. The only downside is on the PC it won't play any of the Windows CE games, because the Dreamcast had the option of programming in Windows CE. So on the computer it doesn't run them, but on this it does. Okay, which for me that's vitally important, and I'll explain why in a minute. But this one system is awesome because it is an Android system. So if you're used to an Android phone, you'll immediately feel at home. It has the Google Play Store that you can download emulators or programs, whatever you want, from, and that's really convenient. And what I found was that when you start the system up, it gives you the option of loading up a bunch of emulators, which is great. Because I know there's a lot of yes or no on emulators. A lot of companies have problems with them. I do too. I have problems with them, and so for the emulation, you really should own the game that you're playing on the emulated. So if you own a copy of Armada for the Dreamcast, then I have no problem with emulating it on this. It's when it takes money away from corporations, which corporations then provide jobs, which then provides people money to pay their rent. I have some issues with it. So this thing has a touch screen, has the 4 face buttons, the XYAB, and it's in the Nintendo order instead of the normal A on the bottom. So that's kind of weird because some programs will set it up just like an Xbox controller, which has the A button on the bottom. And so you just take some getting used to. Like Redream maps it. You can map it however you want, but its initial mapping is the A button is the bottom. So RetroArch does the same thing. Now I had some problems getting this thing going because one of the draws for it for me also was that it plays 3DO games really well, and one of the problems is you have to put the system files in a proper folder. And I was trying and trying for literally a couple months trying to get 3DO to work because the system file had to be put in a certain folder, and I reached out to various YouTube creators and silence. They just won't help you with that. And, which I find kind of funny. But, you support their channel and then you ask them a question and they just don't respond. And that's not how you run a channel. So, but I did figure it out, and it plays 3DO really well. So let's look at the front-end system. Oh, a couple other big things about this. It does have Bluetooth, which means you can use an Xbox controller on it. Okay, that is big. That is big. So I can use this Xbox controller as my controller for the system. In fact, I have this one. This is a dedicated controller for this system. And so when I use that on that, it's awesome. I love it. Because then if you go into like Redream or the Nintendo 64 emulator or the RetroArch, whatever it is, you can map the controls to the Xbox controller, which is fantastic. Okay? So let's look at, like I said, one of the things that I absolutely love about this is that it is Android based, and so it's very simple to navigate, very simple to use. And you scroll just like an Android phone. You just scroll the screen, go to where you want to be, and choose the program you want. It's actually really cool. So, first off, I just want to show you it running Dreamcast, because that is important. And then the important game for that is Armada. Now, Armada is my favorite Dreamcast game, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before. And this plays it really, really well. And it's cool because not only can you hook up a controller to this, like I said, I have my Xbox controller hooked up to it, but you can also get a mini HDMI cord, and they're very small ends. So there's it's a micro HDMI cord. So you can hook up a micro HDMI cord to it and hook it into an HDMI slot on your TV. It doesn't work too well on the big screen because it's, becomes pixelated and everything, but on my little monitor, it's fantastic. And so basically, when I have this hooked up, let me get the sound off here for a second. When I have this hooked up to my monitor using an Xbox controller, it's just like having the console. And so Armada is hands down my favorite game for the Dreamcast, and as you can see, it runs really well. I was surprised because I can't do this on the PC because it won't play the Windows CE games, but on the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, it runs it, and it runs it really well. So a couple of other Dreamcast games. Let's look at that real quick. And there is Crazy Taxi, which is a great game. And they actually did a tribute to Crazy Taxi. It's not a Crazy Taxi game, but it is a taxi driver game for the systems. It's really close to Crazy Taxi. It's good on the current systems. But one thing about the Dreamcast is the Dreamcast was so ahead of its time in almost every respect. Graphically, had an internet connection. The controller, was one of the first systems to switch to the analog sticks. The Dreamcast was just so far ahead of its time. It was sad to see that die. Seeing then like Hydro Thunder here. The Hydro Thunder was a launch game, and if you're familiar with the launch of the Dreamcast, a couple of the games stopped working. You would put them in, and they just wouldn't work, and they had to put out a revised version of them. And so if you're ever in the market for Dreamcast games and you want to get like Hydro Thunder, I think it's Hydro Thunder, Ready to Rumble, it was the Acclaim games. But you want to make sure it has that sticker on there. Yeah, I think it says new or something like that. Because the old ones had problems running. But they did a good job of replacing those right away, so it's kind of hard to find ones that don't work, actually. The Hydro Thunder was an absolute blast, and the Dreamcast version was arguably the best version, period. Added 4-player support, graphics were smooth, it's a good game. Now, one of the coolest things about, let's look at NFL 2K. Now, NFL 2K had some problems running. When I tried running it on the handheld, it had some issues, some stuttering, tearing, as you can see from the video. A little bit of stuttering and tearing and stuff, but it's playable, but not really playable. So the NFL 2 and the NBA 2K games, they do have problems. But that was cool. That was when Moss was actually trying to hold it together. Absolutely amazing receiver. And he was the cover boy for the NFL 2K series. Okay, and then another thing that the system does, which I like, I'm saving kind of what Dreamcast is the most exciting part of it, but there's another one that absolutely thrills me, and I'll get to that last. So the next one I'll show you is the Nintendo 64 emulation. Does really, really good. And then GameCube. So let's look at a GameCube game, which I believe was the best GameCube game, and that is Eternal Darkness. Now, at the time, Resident Evil was the big thing. Yeah, it kind of still is, but Resident Evil had the spotlight. But Eternal Darkness took that horror genre to another level. Not only was it really cool because you read this book and it sends you into the book and you live out different timelines. So the gameplay varies drastically with each timeline. But then it also introduced something called, I think it was Insanity Mode or something like that. But the more you struggled with the game could tell, like, with how quickly you're doing things and whatnot, your sanity meter would go down. And then you would start seeing things within the game. It actually made me jump a few times. It was pretty cool. Eternal Darkness, best GameCube game, and it runs really well on this. So, see, we can run all the way up to GameCube games and do pretty well at it. But now the last thing that I was so thrilled about was it plays 3DO really well. Now, back in 93 or 94 or something like that, we started the Neutral Zone. It was our pool hall, and we had video games, and we had TVs set up, and we had the 3DO on one, and the other systems on the other. So we had the different systems set up, 3DO on one screen, and Super Nintendo and stuff, and then when PlayStation came out, and the Saturn came out, we put those on the other screen as well. Well, the 3DO, even though it was not a very popular system, it was not a success, was played more than any other system. We had this one guy who would come in every single day and play Need for Speed, this car driving game. And, you know, you look at it and you're just kind of like, okay, the graphics aren't great, and what's going on? For the time, this was amazing. And we had a couple of big screens that we got from the rental store. And so we had them on the, I think they were probably, I want to say 45 inch, I believe. And so we had these big screens, and it was amazing to play these games on them. For the time, they looked amazing, and we had this guy that would come in every morning and play Need for Speed. We could count on him every single morning. He said it was his way of relaxing before going to work, and he absolutely loved it. But the 3DO was definitely played the most out of all of them. Now, when we were building it, when we were actually, you know, got the building and were putting in stuff and building the cabinets and whatnot, we had the TVs in there, and we would go out there and just stay up all night playing these games, and then the next day work. You know, this was back when we didn't need sleep. So one of my top favorite games, not my favorite, but I had a few of those, it depends on the time. But Slayer was a dungeon crawler, had amazing music. This was just, for the time, this was absolutely awesome. I loved the game. But, you know, you just go in, and they were randomly generated dungeons. You could put in a keyword, which would then create a dungeon based on what you put in. And it was very, very linear. I mean, it was all flat. There really was no need to look up or down. But it was fun. And this was one of our favorite games that we played. Absolutely fantastic 3DO game. The 3DO was a great system, totally underrated for the time, but great system. But the reason that we're talking about that is because this little system can play all this. Absolutely amazing. It totally is an impressive little system. Not only can it play, you know, all the old ones from Atari on up. You want to see something Atari? Okay, here you go. Now, you have to tell me what that is. Well, it says it in the thing, so. But yes, they made Halo for the Atari 2600. That's how old that game was. And actually, it's not. They actually made it, you know, of course, afterwards. But it's pretty cool, because they're still making Atari 2600 games, still making Dreamcast games, still making for all the systems. And which is why I love the old systems. And, you know, like I said, when the kids act up, I make them play Atari 2600 games when they don't appreciate what they have. And so, you know, good stuff. So anyway, that's the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. I love it because not only can you hook up a controller, a Bluetooth controller, you can hook it up to a TV, plays all the things that the other one did, and then more, because it plays Dreamcast fantastic. It plays them without a problem. I mean, there's a few of them that it won't play. I've found that I log into them, you know, log into a certain game, and it just stops. But that's only like maybe 3 out of all the games. So its percentage is really high. Plays Nintendo 64 pretty well. Nintendo 64 is a hard one to emulate, but it does play it pretty well. You can play GoldenEye on it. GoldenEye has not aged well, but that's okay. It's still one of my favorite games. Still love it. So, yeah. Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. If you have any questions about it, let me know. You know, one of the things that I had trouble with, and it took me so long to get it going, was, you know, with my memory issues and, you know, everything that's going on with that. You know, I would figure something out and then forget it in about, 20 seconds. But I would just try to do it in steps, write down where I was at, look at videos and stuff, and finally got it playing the things that I wanted to play it. And for that reason, I love it. So that's my video. I was bored, made a video. Have a good one.